Welcome to everybody. What an interesting topic we have today. This is a special session that we've put together. We had hoped to put it together a couple of weeks ago, but there have been some challenges with figuring out exactly how to make certain that we manage this in the appropriate way. We want to handle this topic as responsibly as we can. So here we are for Don't Panic, Plan, Tariff Tactics and Proactive Strategies in the Creative Industries. Thanks for joining us. Jordan?
Yeah, we're David and Jordan, and we host the NAMTA Connect program. So welcome. We know that a few of you might be joining for the first time or maybe as guests and not NAMTA members, but we just wanted to extend a warm welcome to you. We're so glad that you're here, and we're excited for this discussion.
Interesting times, what we're looking at with tariffs and global sourcing in the creative industry. I'll be moderating, but this is going to be an interactive session. If you've been to our sessions in the past, you know that we try to keep these as conversational and personal as we possibly can. We want this to be engaging as well as illuminative. But we're going to look at things like risk mitigation, supply chain strategy, and how we're maintaining brand resilience and shifting trade policies. I do want to offer one particular and one specific advisory, which is I'm sure you're all aware that we need to be mindful of avoiding anything that could be construed as collusion or collusionary activity. I'm trying to, earlier we tried to decide whether or not that's really a word, but collusion is, but collusionary. So we want to make certain that we're mindful of that. It's great to have everybody here. What I'm going to do next is ask Denzil and then Pat to talk a little bit about what your strategies have been, how you're seeing this taking shape for your business and how you see it evolving as we head into some of these challenges. And really appreciate your being willing to share the things that are working for you. Let's start with you, Denzil.
Thanks, David. I know I would add one question to that poll, and it would be how many people would rather go to the dentist and have a root canal with me versus talking about tariffs? And that would be 100%, I bet. So, but it is a very serious subject, and we have a diverse group on here. I'm a little surprised at how diverse the group is, but that's great to hear because there's a lot of interest and people need to know these things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about I'm not a tariff expert by any stretch of the imagination. I have some experience.
The first 20 minutes of these are usually like.
I have some experience in dealing with tariffs in the past, and I'll go through that a little bit, and then our experience really in the past has been, I don't know if anybody's heard of the 301 tariff, but the 301 tariff started in, I want to say 2017-ish or something around there. So that was going to impact us by adding 25% to our machines and possibly some other products too. So we actually went through, and we've done this in the past before too, in 2008 and 2010 and 2014. Tariffs aren't new, they pop up. The difference here is the extraordinary amount of the tariff is a little overwhelming for all of us, I think. So we worked with a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Who does this for a living. He's been in the business for years and years, 25 years or something. And he worked on our behalf. We paid him, and we also met with with our two senators from Arizona or their offices, and also congressional representatives. This was a few years back, to get the 25% tariff, the 301 tariff, to get an exemption for it. So it doesn't go to zero. It's just that we're exempt for it for a period of time. That exemption expired this May. So this month it expires. So in addition to the 120 or 145% tariff, there's also another 25% tariff. So on our machines, we have 170% tariff on our machines right now for when we try to import machines from China in particular. So we had lunch with this lobbyist a week or two ago, something like that. And I'm just going to share with everybody with what he said. So, and again, he's done this forever. He's very tuned in with what's going on in Washington, D.C. and stuff. And he said, the reality is the target is China for a number of reasons. We don't want this to get into politics and stuff too, but the target is China, unfair trade. I know that, all the things with copyright infringement, trade infringement, there's a lot of different issues there that the current administration believes that exist between the US and China, trying to resolve some of the trade imbalance and things too. I know that there's also been, and so these are his words. He's telling us that the issues with that are around the trade issues, the tariff issues that are around Vietnam and Taiwan. He believes those will go away, and I know those have been kind of put on pause. And I think that they're resolving a lot of the issues between the U.S. and Taiwan, the U.S. and Vietnam. The mid to long term range, the reality, again, these are his words. He believes that for the remainder of this administration, so till January 20th of 2029, at some point he believes that tariffs are for China they're gonna settle in between the 40 and 60% range, which is still extremely high and something that we have to address and resolve. And we can talk about those things too. Obviously, we are looking at moving production from China to some of these other countries. We've brought back as much as we can to the US. We deal with a lot of vendors in the US, but there are some things that are impossible to make in the US. We don't have the skill set. We don't have the manufacturing capability. We don't have the wherewithal to do it. So there are some of these products that we make, we are looking to move to Vietnam. We've been active working with our manufacturers, with some of the factories that we have long-standing relationships with. Also, Mexico is opportunities, things going on there. I can also tell you that I talked with a guy who owns a factory in China on Friday night, and he said that factories are closing left and right in China, as his words. He said a lot of suppliers, so supply chain disruption. Like all of us see the immediate thing is tariffs. Oh my gosh, how are we gonna? The finances are the thing that slap us in the face. The longer term things are there are factories closing in China left and right, is his words. So, and I agree. The monetary side is important, and we need to figure that out. But we also need to be aware that this is going to be disruptive to the supply chain. We don't know where it's going to go. It is hard to do some long-term planning. I know most manufacturers, us included, we have several months of inventory supply on some things that we're out of that are on the way, and so it's just there's a gamut. There's not one solution. There's not one magic bullet that's going to fix everything. So,
Denzil, thanks for that. Before we go on, I want to ask a question about, you mentioned the fact that we don't necessarily have those skills that are necessary here in the States. In trying to prepare as best I could for this session, I spent some time with some economists here at Colorado State University, and they were commenting on that as well, that there's an assumption that much of this business is going to come back into the US, but there's some real challenges around being able to develop the skill set to do that. Do you see within this particular market, within our community, are we capable of building those skills in a reasonable time frame to be able to impact and create some solutions around this?
On some products, possibly, many products not. The way, the reality is like like most of the clear stamps, as we all know in the craft side of things, clear stamps are almost exclusively made in the US now. There's some still, some of the big box stores and stuff will make some low cost introductory clear stamp kind of things in Asia. But a lot of the inks are solidly done in the U.S. The quality control and stuff of the inks are really important. But there are some things like with assembly, like our machines, like a machine that we retail for, $149. We've priced it out in the US. We've tried to look at that, and it would cost $500 at retail. The same $149 machine would cost $500 at retail if we were to try to bring it back to the US. And so we've explored those things. So there's some things where assembly that, man, you know what? I've been to China many times, and we have an office there, and the office reports to me, and I work with them every single day. There's some things that China does really, really, really well, and and when you look at a coordinated group of engineering, manufacturing, packaging, assembly, they just do some things really well that I don't think there's any chance that it would go away before it would come back here.
Yeah.
Certain categories would be.
Yeah, so let's come back to some of the things that you alluded to. I want to make certain that we have plenty of time for you to share some of the actions and some of the strategic elements that you're looking at. But I want to give Pat a chance to jump in here. Pat, can you talk a little bit about some of the preparation and maybe some of the things that you've tried to address with your business as you're looking into this? Maybe considering some of the things that Denzil has also said about the actions that he's taken with his business, how are some of these things taking shape for you too?
Yeah, so a little bit of background, just real quick on Paintable pictures. So we have an activity kit that it's a painting kit, a paint by number kit that allows you to paint a photo of your pet. So it's a lot of acrylic paints, brushes, canvas. It's all made in China, and we grow entirely in the US. And we're a new brand. We've only been around 2 years. So my perspective is going to be different than a lot of folks' perspective as an early stage brand and what our goals are and what our situation is. Because on one hand, we're leaner, and so we're able to do some things really quickly. But on the other hand, we don't have a lot of the kind of mature distribution that we're trying to get over the next year. So for us, like going into this year, our goal was to, as an early stage brand, we're in about 600 stores right now. We'd like to be in about 2,500 by the end of the year. We were on track for that. And then the tariffs hit. And so we have to make choices on, are we going to change our plan, or are we going to like continue to execute on that, try to get to 2,500 stores and then 10,000 stores next year, knowing that it's going to be, it's hard to like thread that needle, right, and make promises 6 months out that you then have to figure out over the next few months. So what we did over the first couple weeks, like even starting at Creativation, and by the way, David was my second. I was there last year in New Orleans.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, that was we were just a baby back then. We've come so far. So even while there, we were like walking the aisles, like trying to talk to suppliers, and they were there, which was incredible. So the timing of Creativation this year was actually convenient. If there was a pro about the announcement, it was while the industry was together. I think that was around the time that the biggest tariff hike was announced. And then so we did like a 2-week blitz on contract manufacturer reevaluation. We looked at the US, we talked to 3 manufacturers, we looked at Vietnam, we looked at Germany, and we talked to actual sales folks and even CEOs of some of these companies. And we very quickly found thematically, like in mature economies, just like Denzil said, like there's some things you're just not going to do, like injection molding. We have plastic pods that have acrylic paint in them. A lot of those tools don't exist here, and that was a showstopper, I think is the word, like a non-starter. That was the word. Showstopper is like a performer, I think. So non-starter. And so we very quickly were able to identify the parts of the world outside of China where we could viably continue. And then now we're moving down those paths as fast as we can. So we're not there yet though. Like when I saw how prepared we are for tariffs, I would say somewhat prepared. We have a plan that we really like. But it's still about execution, and it's about finding the pockets of the world where you can operate because this is a game, a little bit of musical chairs. There's only so much capacity in the world to accept everything that's coming out of China. So you got to find your chair. So if you're not working on that, like that's what you got to be doing. You got to be dialing for dollars. But there are seats out there, and it's about finding the best fit because you could burn a lot of calories talking to, like Denzil and I both have done, American manufacturers that will do the work. They're interested in the business, but it's just not a good fit for what the infrastructure is right now.
Interesting to have both of you and your perspectives on this, and Pat, to have you here as you've turned it an early stage business. So the conversations that you're having with retailers and with trying to get to that 2,500 retailer level, to what degree are retailers remaining open to the discussions that you're having and how you're positioning your product range based upon its potential to appeal to the consumer? The fact that you've got something which is new, which is really interesting, which is fun for people to do paintings of their pets. How much are retailers still staying focused on that as a potential market opportunity, or are they getting thrown off, and is the pricing discussion proving to be a major hindrance?
So it's interesting times. So one thing that a lot of retailers are focused on right now is preserving their aisles. Especially the bigger the retailer, the more complexity there is with their planograms and how many wrinkles are thrown into that, that they're really focused on that. So a couple new SKUs to paint your pet, not the biggest priority. However, so like routine buying operations are thrown off. But opportunistic buying opportunities are much higher now. So as you move through a planogram as a retailer and you start figuring out how you're going to plan for the back half of the year, you do have openings that pop up. So we need to be there for those openings. It doesn't mean we might not get the buyer meetings now in April that we hope to get, or May. But it's about planning around that and starting to build the relationships with new channels that you don't have, so that when those spots are available, that you have, a little bit of a foundation that you can build on. Doesn't mean you're going to close some sale in May, but it does mean that, we're hearing it everywhere, and particular channels are going to be different. We also play in the toy industry, and the toy industry is arguably in a worse spot because of so much plastics that go into those products. Those shelf aisles are going to be hurt. We're a product that can play in toys, and so you can be smart about what channels you try to play in, and it doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth ride for us 2,500, but we feel pretty good that those two things are kind of a wash. There's so much chaos in the market, it's hard to say which one's more powerful of force.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and good for you, as you said, that you're able to be somewhat nimble. Denzil, that's it. That question for you too. How is the current environment impacting your buyer meetings and discussions?
Great question. I want to comment on a couple of things that Pat said though too, is excuse me. Everything I say right now could be wrong tomorrow. I mean, as fast as this everything is changing. But Pat commented on planning, and I think it's if you do nothing and you buy any significant amount of product from China, in particular, if you do nothing, I think you'll probably be out of business in a year from now. You have to plan. You have to put it on paper. I don't think that I don't think there's, tariffs aren't going to go back to 10% or to 0% from China, or to probably even 20%. I think you need to be in the mindset that tariffs from China are going to be 40 to 50%, maybe 60%. I don't think that they'll stay at 145 or 170%, but you need to plan. The challenges that we really have is skill set. We have become dependent on the factories we work with have great engineering. They have great manufacturing. I've been to factories in the US. I've been to a lot of factories in the US, and I've been to probably 200 factories in China. Factories that we work with are better, cleaner, more efficient than any factory I've ever been in the US. They're really, really good quality partners, and they have years and years of history that for us to pick that up and move it to Vietnam, which is, one of the things that we're looking at, is really, really hard because of that expertise and the QC, the quality control. The other reality is like, we have quality control inspectors that are our employees that go to the factories and inspect the products when it's being made. So we have a really low tolerance for defects and stuff. And those are Chinese engineers, Chinese folks that they can't get a passport to Vietnam to go train somebody in Vietnam even. So it's like that whole infrastructure of like, how do we move? It's difficult to do. We looked at doing this a few years ago and explored it, and it's just it's a long play. So like Pat said, when you're developing your strategy, you need to look at short term, what am I doing today and over the next 30 days? And then like a midterm, what am I doing over the next 6 months? And then long term, what am I, because you have to be able to breathe, and it's like, what am I doing short term, midterm, long term? Short term are different tactics than what you're doing long term. Long term, the reality is unless you have an extra 40 or 50% margin in your product, you're going to have to move from China.
So you've teed this up, Denzil. So I don't want. I'm going to take the swing. Uh,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Short term, midterm, and long term. And then Pat, we're going to pass that on to you too.
Short term, the things that we look at are, what are our inventory levels? Where do we stand with inventory? Do we need to discontinue items, or are there things that we can bring back to the US or move quickly to Vietnam? There are some things that we can move quickly to Vietnam that don't require quite the skill set or quite the investment. And right now, if you're on the manufacturing side, I know that we are trying to do everything possible not to raise prices for our retailers, because our retailers are extremely important to us and we don't want to burden them with this, nor do we want to burden the end consumer. We're probably going to have to take small price increases in the near term, but then like look at your whole product mix, and we have a huge diverse product mix that is super challenging for us. We deal with like more than 30 factories with different product types and stuff, and so it's like, how do we move that stuff? So we're ranking those things like, okay, this is the most important product that needs to be moved quickly because we can't make it in China. And then who are our options? Are there factories that you're currently working with? Most, I won't say most, a lot. I know a lot of the arts and crafts manufacturers, if it's paints, if it's paint brushes, if it's dyes, or if it's whatever, a lot of the factories that are in China are owned and operated by Taiwanese. And so they have relationships in Taiwan, they have relationships in Vietnam. So you can talk to them, have real conversations with them, have hard conversations with them, push back, tell them, hey, I need better pricing from you. So you can get better pricing from them. You might have to raise your retail prices a little bit. And then you need, that's a short-term thing, some price relief from the manufacturer. And then also just rank what products you need to move and have those real conversations with the factories. They're hearing it from me, they're hearing it from hundreds of other people. And, you just have to have those conversations. They're hard, but you have to have them.
Pat, do you want to comment on that planning and action that you can take short term, midterm, and long term?
Yeah, short term, I'm buying my wife some gifts because in a few weeks I'll probably have to tell her I'm flying to Southeast Asia. Um, I've got two young boys, so that's a fun part of the business. Um, so yeah, I mean, we're keen on maintaining our growth, and so we're our first plan. We have fewer SKUs than Denzil, so we're much more nimble, right? We're early stage, so we can shift a couple SKUs and maybe break what used to be done in one factory into a couple, I think that's going to be possible. We have a secondary backup plan, which is to start sourcing components from a bunch of different countries, including some of them from China, and then kit them in a third country. And so this is really our plan B. This is a much more complex plan, but if we do it that way, if we're able to transform the product in another country, we're able to classify for different tariff codes. Again, not a tariff expert, but that's something, we want to take the right steps for that. But if you're able to actually do a major transformation in a country outside of China, even though it's Chinese components, you may do your own research, not a lawyer kind of caveat, but you may be able to classify that as a non-Chinese product, and you may be able to get a ruling, an advanced ruling on that product to classify it a certain way, so you can go into that with confidence. Those things all take a ton of time though. And so we're really interested, and we have a very popular Christmas product. We've been in like Oprah's favorite things, gift lists. It's a Christmas gift. So we're not going to miss Christmas. So we're planning to, in the short term, move our factory probably to Southeast Asia. And if not, we'll try to create some type of creative kitting solution to get through the holidays. And if we have to do a more kind of like entrenched version of a new factory setup, we would do that 2026.
So that potentially leads to an opportunity for you, doesn't it? And maybe opportunities for you as well, Denzil.
Sure.
There was a major piece in the New York Times last week talking about how the toy industry is potentially really screwed by all of this, and that's going to create some holes on retailer shelves. Does that mean that there are opportunities for you guys to be able to fill those holes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to be at the right place at the right time. So you need to have a brand out there. You need to maintain your brand. You need to be in the right distribution channels. Like, it's hard to just like email the toy buyer at a major store. You want them to be aware of you going into that chaotic period where they finally have a window to be like, okay, I have space. Who do I know that can maybe fill new vendors? Adding new vendors is very expensive for stores. So, they're really going to need, especially if they're busy, and a lot of merchandising departments are strapped for resources. So, you really got to be at the right place at the right time, have your ducks in a row. And I think there is an opportunity there. But at the same time, like, I don't want to gloss over, like, there's a lot of pain going on in the toy industry. I don't want to be like, this is a golden opportunity. We haven't successfully moved our factory outside of China. But if we can, like, that is an opportunity for us to continue growing, potentially outpacing what we could have done without that.
Then, so what about for you? Are there opportunities taking shape for you that you maybe hadn't anticipated earlier?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, when COVID hit, it was huge supply chain disruptions. And, I was trying to, ring the bell then, or whatever, I don't know, whatever metaphor you want to use, but I was trying to talk about, hey, our dependency in any one place it doesn't matter if it's Phoenix, right? There's natural disasters, there are hurricanes, there are floods, there whatever. So we do need to diversify. I think that out of this, we are going to be stronger as an industry. I know we will be stronger as a company. We're going to diversify what we do, where we do it. We're not going to put all our eggs in Vietnam. We're not going to put all of our eggs in. We will keep things in China because they have a skill set that we can't match. And then, Taiwan, other countries in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, we've looked at, Mexico. So I think when this is all said and done, we're going to be stronger and we're going to be better. And there are some short-term opportunities or long-term opportunities that will come out of this. One thing I did fail to mention, David, is that when we got the tariff, when we got the exemption for the 301 tariff, that was by a category of products. So when we got the exemption, the entire industry for die cutting benefited for that tariff. What the administration has mentioned, they have not put any structure in place for you to be able to do it yet, but they have discussed publicly about specific companies that are affected by the tariffs. You will be able to apply for some sort of exemption or relief by company, not by category. So if we apply for it, it will only affect us. If we find out more from our lobbyist, I'll certainly make that available to NAMTA and the greater group and stuff. So you might have to apply directly for yourself, for your specific company, but I don't think tariffs will be zero. I still think they'll be 25, 30, 40, 50%. They're not going to be 145.
Well, that's quite a shift from allowing for discussion and adjustments and exemptions for a category to focusing on exemptions for individual brands, individual manufacturers. I don't want to get political here, but there's challenges there. But that's very gracious and generous of you for being willing and offering to share that information as more becomes available for you through your lobbyist. Thanks for that. I want to make certain we don't miss. I'm jumping back and forth here, guys. I want to make certain we don't miss a question that has come through, and he's asking what are some of the best resources for finding new factories outside of China. Pat, you've commented on that in the chat, but I think it's worth giving both of you guys an opportunity to comment further around that. What are you doing? How are you? Where are you finding the best success for looking for different options?
I can start. We've always done like preliminary research. We haven't done like preliminary research for different factories using resources like websites like Alibaba and stuff like that, just to get almost to use as directories. And then we've used a supply chain agent that has boots on the ground in Shenzhen, et cetera, to evaluate those and help augment our list. But in this new world, it's much harder. We're actually using more interpersonal relationships and having lots of conversations with people in the industry, and that's gone the furthest for us.
Denzil?
I agree 100%, Pat. So all of ours is people that we know, current factories that we work with, that we leverage, our not only our relationships with them, but also our buying power with them to they're feeling this also, so they know the direction that things are going. I think pretty solidly, and so it's interpersonal relationships. Alibaba, AliExpress, whatever. You need to be careful on some of those. Like Pat said, some of those are just trading companies, and they'll tell you one thing and do another, and or they'll, Pat mentioned earlier too, getting a declaration from the Customs Border Patrol about there's a process to go through, like some of the products that we make in China now and are moving to Vietnam or moving to Taiwan or moving wherever. You actually have to get a proper country of origin declaration that proves that you're not just taking something from China, shipping it to Vietnam, repackaging it, and there has to be, I forget the term that they use, it has to be substantial, significant change of the product. So you can import plastic pellets from China to Vietnam and then put it in the mold and make something. That's a significant change. You can't make it in China, move it to Vietnam or Taiwan or any place else and put it in a package. That's not a significant change. So you need to be careful about all those things, because some people are going to try, some companies are going to try and tell you, oh, we can just make it in China, ship it someplace else, package it and ship it out. And then you're going to be stuck with the 145% tariff when it hits the button.
Yeah, so Nicole has just jumped in. Oh, sorry. Denzil, you answered that? No, I think you both have answered the question. Nicole just raised a point about having a 1688, and that makes sourcing in China much easier than sourcing in the home, sourcing locally. Any comments there on that?
No, I know we've explored that. I know that they're like, so some of the things, like if you I can't comment on that. I don't know enough about that. I can comment on like shipping methods. So like if you, in the past, like if you, lots of the shipping is FOB Shenzhen, let's say, or wherever, FOB Hong Kong, whatever it is. So you buy the product at the port and then you import it into the US and you pay tariff on the price that you buy it at, right? So there's also DDP is a method of shipping where the factory itself, the factory imports it all the way to the US, and then you pay, the factory adds the freight costs and the tariff costs onto their cost. Hey, look at that. So so that is a better method of shipping because you know, if you pay $10 for an item and you're paying $10 on that tariff, or you're paying, you know, $10 as the tariff value, right? So if the factory's importing it, maybe they're importing it at a $5 cost. So they're paying tariff on the $5 cost versus a $10 cost. So, you know, you can do some things with that, and that's called DDP. So that's the direct duty paid
Right.
is the method of freight there. So.
Pat, any comments from you on that?
We haven't used that, no. So no comment.
Yeah. How with the de minimis exemption going away, does that create some opportunities for us in this market?
It really depends on your category. I can speak to our category. We face a lot of drop shipped, low cost imitators. So for us, the closing of the de minimis loophole has given us more of a competitive moat and has made things like e-commerce advertising more viable. Whereas before, for our, say, keyword, we were competing against a lot of dropship competitors. So for us, um, it's been really helpful. Yeah. So I think there's definitely pockets of benefit from some of these like tariff adjustments.
Yeah, Denzil?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, I know there's all sorts of loopholes and things, and I know that like, you know, China going back, you know, 50 years, even as far as like a couple of years ago, like lots of people don't want to hear this, but it's the reality. Um, has been considered a developing nation, I think, until recently, you know, obviously. So like when you purchase you know, when customers purchase things from Temu or AliExpress or whatever, those products are the freight for those are actually subsidized by the US government, right? So it's like so not only is it a slap in the face because they're knocking us off, it kind of sucks because your tax dollars are subsidizing the freight from buying something from Temu that's shipped to the US. So hopefully all of this stuff will be addressed. I don't know, you know, I'm not not that deep into the politics side of it, but uh there's certainly issues that's been there that need to be addressed. I don't know if this is the right way to do it. I can't say if it is or if it's not, but I'm glad that there's attention to it because hopefully it'll help with, you know, trademark infringements and you know, the de minimis issues and just, you know, we just need to take a look at this on a whole. It's been building for 50 years, right? So.
Yeah, yeah. Want to encourage the audience to jump in here, please. We have 14 minutes left scheduled for this session. We try to keep these sessions to an hour. Although I will say that if depending upon how this unfolds over the next few minutes, we can all of the panelists have agreed to spend a little more time if needed. So please jump in with any comments, questions. I see a number of manufacturers represented here who I know are also impacted by this, not just in China, but also with European.
I think Christy has something there about, I think that one of the things that we're talking about too, is we might have glossed over it too, all tariffs have to do with country of origin. So if something's purchased in, like I was telling the group earlier, if something's purchased in China and the US has a tariff on China, when it comes to the US, like Canada has a tariff on the US has a tariff on Canada. When you're importing into different countries, it matters the country of origin. So when you're filling out documentation and paperwork, it matters that you highlight that. So if we buy something in the US from China and then we import it into Canada, you don't want, if you're in Canada, you don't want to pay tariffs on a US product when it's actually made in China. So whoever's shipping it from the US to Canada needs to make sure that they fill out the documentation properly so that you pay the proper tariff from Canada to China, not from the Canada to US. So it gets confusing. It's really crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I want to make sure, again, please, I want to encourage everybody who's in attendance to feel free to jump in. Please post questions in chat. If you post a question in the chat, we may ask you to jump in and ask it live so that we can continue to have dialogue around this. Again, I see a number of people who are participating today who are manufacturers as well, with some major brands as well as some startups. So please jump in. As we're waiting for people to jump in as well, I do want to ask a question around communication with consumers. Are you seeing any particular successes, or are you experiencing any particular successes in how you're communicating either with retailers or through retailers to consumers or directly to consumers about how to view this and ultimately what it means for their creative process? I know that's a squishy question, but I got to ask it anyway. Thoughts?
So our brand is probably in a little bit of a different position than most brands. I think we're handling this a certain way, and it kind of goes to Janine's question in the chat. If any brands are biting the bullet, we are. So we're not changing our pricing. We're working with retailers to maintain our pricing too. That is something we eat on our balance sheet. So this is not like a sustainable strategy. What we're doing is we're trying to take call it 18-month view on how we're going to make these changes. And this is what we're focused on, right? Is to sourcing in countries where we don't have to pay as high of a tariff. I follow Denzil's logic on there's going to be countries that are safer, even though there's a lot in flight. I kind of believe his thesis on how things will play out, although we don't know. And so we are one of the companies that are eating tariffs. We work with retailers to try to communicate that, or try to stay on the same page, because they're looking for what to expect. What I have found is when tariffs were 10, 20%, the conversations with retailers were more contentious. Now that they're 145%, retailers are more coming to the table, and we're trying to figure out like, hey, how do we get through this together? And so I found that those negotiations have been a little bit easier as people are starting to get more into the routine of these are the types of things that we're talking about to have to get through the year.
Yeah, so actually, I think that Stacy asked the question better than I did, which is how are manufacturers, what are you looking for from mom and pop retailers or any retailers for support in communication with consumers?
I don't think that, I think everybody's head spinning a little bit. So I don't know if there's, when it comes to messaging retailers, I'm a firm believer that I think that the larger retailers have been very reluctant for any kind of price increase. And sometimes they'll even flat out say, hey, we will not take a price increase on a particular product. And that's okay. We just won't sell it to you. So some of the independent retailers certainly they understand, because they're the ones, it's the same person who's buying the product, who's selling the product, who's running the store, who's paying the electric bill, who's paying the rent, and they see all those costs going up. So the independent retailers tend to understand the reality of the business situation right now, and they're more willing to work with us to say, hey, you know what, we got to raise this thing by $1. We're not, I haven't seen any manufacturers yet, add 170% to their price. If they do that, that's crazy. But you know, there might be $1 here, there might be $1 there, or $2 or $5 or whatever. And you know, I think the good part about this is like at least there's enough awareness right now to where it wouldn't be, you know, a foreign thought or something crazy if that has to happen. And we're trying to do it selective. Nothing that's made in the US is having any price increasing right now. But you know, I don't think that we've done a very good job of how we announce that to retailers and stuff. And we're working on our messaging and stuff. But the reality too is like you just don't know. Every day something changes. So it's hard. So we're open to any suggestions or ideas as far as like how we handle this together.
Yeah.
One follow-up I have on Denzil's point too is like communicating like price increases. We found a lot of retailers and our brand can get on the same page if we have a line item for tariffs that we come to agreement is flexible based on our actual costs that's associated with that, so that there's transparency in what the price increase is, rather than this black box that if tariffs change, what do we now do with this PO? Is this still usable? So that gives you some flexibility to go forward, but also gives you the transparency to see where the pricing changes, why they
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, but there have been a couple of interesting comments and a question in the chat here I want to call out. One is from Janine asking about how tariffs are impacting items that may be sent without charge, samples for marketing purposes. What's happening for you guys with those?
For us, if there are any influencers or designers, you know, on the call, domestically, like you know, we're a U.S. company. If we're shipping within the US, we haven't seen any issues. We have seen some things pop up, like if we send to a designer in Germany or to somebody in Canada, even if it's a product sample, we've seen those things pop up and it's inconsistent. So it's really hard to deal with because one time you'll get it, one time you won't. So sometimes it's a matter of how you fill out the paperwork. So yeah, that does suck. But you know, if you have a relationship, if you're a designer or an influencer and you have a relationship with a particular brand and you have an issue, certainly highlight it to them, bring it to their attention so that they can make the adjustments. And sometimes you have, you know, sometimes especially if you're a designer in Lithuania, you know the rules and regulations is with sending something to Lithuania or wherever. But we've had that pop up now and then.
Yeah, just I send out my samples to
Yeah.
influencers. I send them out like I type them in and I get them out. Like I'm very responsible for that, and so I feel the cost of that. I would just say like in the past, we used to send a lot of samples out to influencers, and if the influencer didn't use that content or use that
Yeah.
product to make content, it was sort of just the cost of doing business. I think we're sharpening our pencil now. We're doing a little bit more underwriting up front to say, hey, like you're gonna post content if we're gonna send you this kind of precious asset that we have. And
Yeah.
so we're not increasing costs or anything related to it, but we're doing a little bit more diligence to make sure the influencers are actually gonna deliver their end of the deal.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about trying to watching all of this and again in preparation for this call, for this session, is it seems to me, and I'm going to editorialize here very briefly, it seems to me that if anything, now is a time for, as an industry, for us to be doubling down on the messaging around the power of creativity and making certain that our branding remains strong, not just for individual brands, but also for the industry as a whole, that we are fuel for your creative process, for the consumer's creative process. And let's not lose sight of the things that people love about us. If anything, now is the time to make certain that we're strengthening that messaging. And Stacy has just asked something which I think ties into that, which is, are customers asking about that? Are they asking if they should be stocking up now? Can they continue the hobby? Is this going to impact their ability to be able to continue to be creative? Thoughts about that, you guys?
I mean, I certainly, I always start big picture and drill down. It's like, we've, in the past 100 years, there's been 2 world wars and tons of other wars and lots of bad things and hurricanes and famines and floods and stuff. we're going to get through this. I mean, we're resilient people. We're a great industry. Everybody, nobody's in this industry to get rich. Everybody's here because they love what they do. The passion is for creativity is what's kept me in it for, 40 years and 30 some years, whatever it is, and now 30 some years. And so people love what they do. So we're going to find a way through it. There's going to be speed bumps along the road. And I think that's a great question, Stacy. I think it's, and I know people are asking it, but yeah, we're going to get through it. And I don't think that we're going to find solutions that, if something costs $10, 2 months ago, it might end up costing them 11 or 12 now, but it's not going to be $30, it's not going to be $25. So we're going to find solutions. We're going to find ways. We're going to share. I've talked to a lot of other manufacturers we never talk price or anything like that, like you're saying earlier, David, but we certainly talk about best practices. Like, hey, let's find out, let's find the best way to do this, and you do whatever designs you're doing, you charge whatever you want to charge. But as competitors, we benefit from the high tide raises all boats philosophy. We certainly believe in that, and we want our competitors to succeed and do well and inspire new people. So I think that we're all in this together, and we're going, the next 6 to 12 months might be a little rocky, but I bet in a year and a half from now, we're going to be stronger than we are today.
Yeah, that's a great message. Pat, your thoughts?
I think events like this, like roundtable sessions,
Yeah.
are really useful as we try to figure out ways to move together. Like, the reason that I'm open to sharing our perspective isn't because I think I'm an expert on navigating tariffs. It's more about helping build a bigger conversation around what we can do as an industry to be successful, right? Like, Paintable Pictures is not going to be successful if Denzil's not also successful.
Right.
So we need to I think there's things that we can continue doing this year, having more roundtable sessions like this where people just kick around what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're seeing, best, coming towards a sense of like common practice or best practice, and getting through it. Like, there's going to be products on the shelves. They might be lighter than they were last year. I think that's true. But there's going to be companies that maybe get an opportunity out of that otherwise wouldn't have a shelf spot. You might have a different array of products on the shelf. It might be messy, but life's going to go on, and like, people are still going to be able to continue the hobby.
That's fabulous. And yeah, I've said this before. When we reach circumstances or an atmospheric moment like this in a session, where if this were a musical, this is where I burst into song. That's so nicely put with both of you guys. Again, I think we're going to be willing to go over for a few minutes. If anybody has other questions or comments or suggestions as to how you're handling these issues, please go ahead and do so. But one other question that I'm going to ask right now with Denzil and Pat is, as a follow-on to what you just said, what can NAMTA do? What do you see as being most beneficial for NAMTA to be able to deliver to help support what you think is necessary, and how we can help support our membership through this challenge?
I'll take a quick one at this one. So like, I think facilitating conversations between manufacturers and retailers, because manufacturers can all get together and come up with like cool ideas for how to put tariffs on their POs or where to source, right? But really, for there to be success at the customer level, like, the whole value chain needs to work, and come up with creative solutions to get there. And I think that only happens with lots of dialogue and conversation.
Agreed.
Denzil?
Yeah. Dialogue and conversation is the key. Pat is a great new business. We want to see new businesses in this industry, and I guess that 90% of the companies, and it might be higher, 90% of the companies in this industry, no matter if you're a manufacturer or if you have a retail store or if you're a creative professional, whatever your role is, you got into it because you loved it, you're artistic, you needed some to express yourselves. This situation with the tariffs is a little more complex. So if you have a small business, if you just started a business 2 years ago, like Pat, Pat seems to, we don't know each other that well, but seems, he has a great business mind and is approaching this logically and stuff. A lot of people who are creative people might not have that business side to their understanding. So they're used to running their small creative business. So I think if there's a venue or a place, I know we've talked about creating a special Facebook page for this topic or this conversation with manufacturers and retailers and stuff. I think something like that, where we could share our thoughts, share ideas as they come to us, or as it changes. And then if we do a call like this once every couple months or whatever, if needed, that's great. But I think if we could have some kind of venue where we could share ideas to help, because just like Pat, it's like I'm not an expert on this, but and if I'm not an expert, somebody who has just a creative mind and is thinking about the designs, and it's their business with their name on it, they probably don't think about tariffs at all. So how can we help them navigate this complex situation that changes every day?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think so. Jordan has just put a call out in chat. If you have suggestions or thoughts around what NAMTA can do to best help with this, to help us
Yeah.
all navigate these waters as they continue to shift, please go ahead and post it. And that's not a question that has a time limit. We would encourage all of you to, as you're thinking about this, go ahead and reach out. You can certainly reach out to the NAMTA staff. You can reach out to us at NAMTA Connect around how best to approach this. We're going to be open to all kinds of suggestions and thoughts about how we can help best navigate this and help our industry not just survive but flourish as we go through this. Stacy raised, I think, a really good, again, way of phrasing some of these questions and these issues, in which she said that she's trying to find a balance on messaging, price increases, and value adds that encourage spending. Is there a balance that you guys can see right now?
I would guess that people are interested in our product at $40. I don't know that our product is the right gift at $80. I think you have to really understand what the customer is willing to pay. Like your tariff math only adds up to the extent the customer's willing to pay. And you can't just justify a cost increase because that's what it costs you. So part of this has to do with a broader economic situation. Do people have the money to afford these products? And try to like find the balance. And I think the customer will vote with their dollars ultimately. Like there's only so much marketing influence you can do to say you should buy this painting kit. I actually don't want to do that. I'm not interested in doing that. I'd rather say like, here's this painting kit. If you can afford it, buy it, and then let the customer guide us to like what that price point ought to be, rather than come up with marketing messages to try to extract as much money as we can. Not that that's a suggestion, but I'm not willing to personally do that.
Yeah, Denzil?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what Pat's saying there too, in that I don't think the price, I don't even know if you have to necessarily, if somebody's asking specifically about price increases, I think it's safe to say that, yeah, there probably going to be price increases like everything else. It's, there's a lot of different factors in that, but it's not going to, I don't think we're going to, you know, price ourselves out of the market or out of business. I mean, eggs cost more, gas costs more, everything we do is costing more nowadays, with even before tariffs, with inflation. Now, how this impacts that, I don't know. We'll see. Um, but yeah, I mean, people have a desire to be passionately creative, and they might choose to try a different hobby now, or they might choose to try a different doing something creative different, or try making something smaller or whatever, I don't think it's going to be creative ending to people. I think the power to make something, the power to be creative is not going to matter if something's $11.99 or $10.99.
Yeah, and I'm gonna editorialize as well. Again, having been in this industry now for over 40 years and worked with consumers during all of that time, this is not existential. People want to create. People want to
Right,
make
right.
stuff, and they will continue to want to make stuff. And I think we're going through a time where we're going to have to shift, as what Pat has said. We're going to have to figure out what consumers are willing to pay for some of these things, but they will continue to want to create. They will continue to want to use our products. And we need to find the best way that we can deliver it in a way that works within the cost structure that we're all having to work within right now.
Yeah. If
So, yeah.
I agree, David. I mean, you just triggered the thought in my head. Like, if you've built a business around price, 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 you might have to change your messaging. But if you've built your business around self-expression in creating something, then you're gonna have a more dedicated consumer who, yeah, they might have to choose to do something different, or maybe not make, as in our case, a lot of our customers make cards. They might not make as extravagant of a card. They might not add embossing, but they're going to do die cutting, or vice versa, or whatever. But if you've been adding value to education and creativity and empowering that customer, I think that's a stronger position to be in. So,
It's funny. I'm remembering this. I'm really going to date myself. My first NAMTA, we had a keynote speaker in 1986 who was Stanley Marcus. You remember Neiman Marcus?
yeah, yeah.
And Stanley Marcus's message with that keynote in 1986 was, if you build your business based on price, 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 you're going to be in trouble. If you build your business around creativity and expression, he was saying to our industry, then you're going to find it much easier to build a business going forward. So there we go.
Yeah.
That's always been the case, and I think it's even more the case now. All right. Well, folks, I think we're going to wrap. We're running a little over. Again, we typically with these sessions try to stay right on an hour, but this is such a juicy topic, and you've raised the point that it's good for this to be an ongoing discussion. So we'll certainly look toward doing a follow-up on this in another couple of months, and maybe Denzil and Pat, if you guys are willing to participate again, we can bring you back and see how things are taking shape for you 2 months down the road, and then we'll also look at ways, look at including some other people as well. Thanks so much to everybody for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time, and stick with us. Those of you who are not members, this is the kind of thing we do on a regular basis. We'd love to have you back, and hope that we can see you with future sessions. Thanks so much to all. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
All right.